everybody, and welcome back to the Girly Girl Bookworm. So today I have for you my second quarter stats. So this is books from April, May, and June. I will say that I found this quarter to be really interesting. I have read a total of 54 books this quarter compared to last quarter. Let me just grab that really fast. Last quarter I read 79. So it's significantly less, but I found it extremely difficult to pick out standouts this round. I had a ton of 5 stars. I had a ton of 4.5 star reads. Like I started being like, oh, I'll just put any 4.5 and 5 star read in this like standout section. Then I started writing them down, and then I realized there was a ton. So then I was like, I need to just pick 5. So let's just dive into the stats. So like I said, I read 54 books total. I read 18 books in April. I read 20 books in May, and I read 16 books in June. I don't know what happened in June. I think I just got a little slumpy. I'm not really sure what happened. I think also I did a lot of like cleaning in like April and May. I did a couple like audiobook listens. So I think that that's where those got more months. I don't really know. I don't pretend to know anything about my reading half the time. I read 19 books physically. I read 20 books on my Kindle, and I read 15 books on audio, which I think is pretty like cool that they ended up averaging out, because I think with last quarter I did a lot of, I'm trying to pull it back up. Last quarter I did 20 physical, 38 Kindle, and 21 audio. So like significantly more like audio and Kindle than like physically. So I'm very proud of myself that like my physical numbers have gotten a lot better, which is so wild to me, because like last year, if you looked at any of my like ratings, like I always like was like almost only Kindle, like only physical books. So like the fact that like my physical reading has tanked so bad, I'll take 19 at this rate. My own library, Netgalley, and Kindle Unlimited one. So what I did was books that I own versus library. Like my library numbers are strictly how many books that I borrowed from the library. I don't know if I did that the last time. Yeah. So my library books are like books that I strictly only like had library copies for. And my Netgalley are books that I strictly had Netgalley books for. Some of the books that I read from like that I own, I read from the library, but I counted them as books that I own, if that makes sense. And like some books that I like read through Netgalley, I actually own now, but like I'm not counting them as own because I read them for Netgalley. I don't know. I make things up, right? So I owned 40 out of the 54 books that I read, which is awesome. 3 books from the library, and 11 books were either Netgalley or Libro FM books, and I was awful and read nothing from Kindle Unlimited. You know what? Never mind. No, I didn't read anything from Kindle Unlimited. Whoops. And then break it down to genres. And again, genres are so... I have to say, the stats videos, I love to like track stats, but I am like the worst at actually creating stats, because I feel like so many books can be so many different things. Like I was just saying with like owned or library, like technically half of those books that I put as own, I read from the library, but I own them. So like genres too, like a book can be contemporary, but it can also be mystery, but it can also be romance, but it like, so it's just like so confusing as to like what to put books as. So take everything with a grain of salt. Everything could be totally wrong. So according to what I think anyways, I read 9 contemporary novels, 11 romance, 7 historical fiction, 20 thrillers, 3 nonfiction, 2 magical realism. That was the one that I was like, because I was thinking like Meant to Be Mine was magical realism, but it like kind of like wasn't. So like I was like, do I put you under magical realism or do I put you under romance? And I put it under romance. So like I said, take it with a grain of salt. And then 2 fantasy novels, which again, like I'm counting the violence as fantasy. It's probably more like dystopian, but I don't know. So I put it as fantasy. So I'm not really surprised by these stats. I'm pretty impressed with the 20 thrillers because, like, I always read thrillers, so that isn't surprising. Contemporary romance, not surprising. The fact that I got 7 historical fiction in is pretty cool, and 3 nonfiction, again, is also pretty cool because I typically don't read a ton of nonfiction, so I will take 3. That's pretty impressive. And then let's go to standouts. I tried to pick 5 books that are not really, like, everywhere. So, like, I could have talked about Black Cake, but I'm not going to because I just raved about that a ton in my past few videos. I could have talked about It Could Be Anyone, but I've been raving about that in a ton of my old videos. So I decided to pick some books that I feel like I don't talk a ton about or that don't get a ton of buzz anyways. So we've got In the Face of the Sun by Jenny Bryce, S. Bryce. I don't see anybody reading her books, and I think that's so awful because her books are so good. She writes historical fiction with 2 perspectives, so we get 2 like historical fiction timelines, so like that's a plus in my book. And this one we're following a woman in 1928, and we're following a woman in 1968. We meet Frankie in 1968, and she is clearly trying to leave a domestic violence type of marriage, and she is getting the help of her aunt, but her aunt hasn't really been in her life, and we don't really know why, and she doesn't really know why. And we're following the 1928 perspective, which is her aunt's story when there was a new hotel that was being built, and she was trying to work for this hotel. And like I said, it's just, I love dual historical fiction timeline stories. Please pick this up. Please pick up her other book if you have not already. I don't want to get the name wrong. It's been a while since I've read it. Where is it? Wild Woman in the Blues. Like, she writes about interesting timelines in America, not World War II stories, like just good historical fiction. You need to check her out. I forgot that book was there. Another historical fiction, I have raved about this plenty, but I feel like I need to do it a little bit more, and that's A More Perfect Union by Tammy Huff. This book, if you liked Yellow Wife, please pick this one up. If you like this one, pick up Yellow Wife. But this one is about a man who is leaving Ireland because he's trying to get away from the famine. And when he gets here, he becomes a blacksmith, and he's looking for work, and he ends up working on this plantation, where he then meets this woman who is a slave on this plantation. And it's kind of just like the plantation dynamics, but it's also a bit of their love story. It's actually part of Tammy Huff's like actual family life story. It's like her great grandparents or something like that, and their love story. So I thought that was beautiful. I love when books can kind of be based on true stories. I hate that this has to be part of her life story because it's just awful, but I do love that it does have some realness to it. And it was amazing. This one, I feel like it got a lot of buzz on Instagram last year, but I didn't really see the buzz transfer here. But that is The Secret Bridesmaid by Katie Burchell. I feel like I've been talking about this one a lot lately, but I think it's also because I just read it last month. And this is a book that I listened to on audio. And it reminded me a lot of The Wedding Ringer, the movie with Kevin Hart in it, where we are following a woman who is basically a professional bridesmaid. People can hire her, and she will basically help you plan your wedding. And she ends up getting hired to be a bridesmaid for this very well-to-do family, and the girl does not want her as her bridesmaid. She is willing to basically do anything to like get her to quit, because she doesn't want to feel like she's buying friends. She doesn't want this, but her mother wanted it for her, so she hired her. And I just loved this book in particular because obviously there's a lot of humor in it. There's obviously romance in it, but there's interspersed like between chapters of just like her dealing with bridesmaids and her planning things and her dealing with vendors, and it just like this book made me laugh out loud, and not many books can do that. So I feel like if a book can actually make me smile and make me laugh, like that right there means it's a true standout, and I'm so glad that I picked this up, and I really want to read more by this author. This just going on the floor. I had to put in The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd in here because I feel like it's one of those books that, like, got buzz, but, like, also, like, didn't get buzz at the same time. This is a book that I came super close to DNFing because I had seen, like, 2 reviews, like, back to back that were, like, atrocious for it, and I was like, oh my god, like, I'm kind of not enjoying it right now. Like, maybe I should DNF it too, like, so that way I don't end up like them. I'm so glad that I didn't. This is a magical realism story, so, like, a lot of people's problems with it was the fact that the magic was never fully, like, explained, and I was so caught up in the story that, like, I didn't care that it wasn't explained, if that makes sense. So we were following a girl who, her father was a cartographer, she was a cartographer, and then something happens that basically destroys their relationship, and they don't see each other for years. Her father ends up dying, and amongst his things is this, like, map that kind of caused all of the problems that they had together. And as she's looking at this map, she's starting to uncover things, and people are dying and, like, getting killed, and she's just trying to figure out what the heck this map is doing and, like, what it means for her life. And I thought it ended up being really fun. I really liked it. Again, like, I feel like it's a good sign for a book when in my head I go, maybe I'd like to reread that one day, especially considering I don't reread books, like, ever. So the fact that it's even crossing my mind that, like, hey, one day maybe I might want to reread this, I think that that makes it a standout right there. And then the last book that I'm going to put in here as a standout, even though, like I said, I could probably talk about, like, 10 more, I'm going to put in here The Love of My Life by Rosie Walsh. And like I said, this is, like, so wild. Like, Riley Sager's book didn't make this list, like, even though, like, it should make this list, but I know I'm going to be raving about it anyway, so, like, it's not on this list. But The Love of My Life by Rosie Walsh I thought was such an interesting book because this was one that I was like, I don't even know where to put this, because, again, it was kind of, like, contemporary, but it also had some elements of, like, thriller mystery. Like, this is like an all genre type of book. Like, I feel like this book has something for kind of, like, everybody. We're following a man who is married to a woman, and she has just beat cancer, and suddenly she goes missing, and he starts realizing that she is not the person he thought she was. And so we're kind of getting his perspective of him looking for his wife. We're following the perspective of, like, his wife now, but we're also following, like, these journal entries and just, like, the past, and just, it was, like, one of those books that, like, I couldn't put down. I feel like it's a book that, like, won't be for everybody, but, like, also has something for everybody. So if this is a book that's been on your radar, like, I would pick it up. Like, even though this book was, actually, it's only, 370 pages. So it is a bit of a chunky book, but it was one of those books that, like, for me, flew by, that I, like, still think about it. And again, it's one that I'm like, do I want to redo someday? It deals with a lot of postpartum in here as well, and, like, so if that's something that's triggering for you, I don't know if it's necessarily something that you would want to deal with. Like I said, it also has to deal with cancer, and it just, I want to reread it now. I don't have time to reread it, but I want to. All right, so that is my my second quarter stats of the year. I'm intrigued to see where my third quarter goes. So far, I feel like it's going pretty well. I've read some things that I think could potentially be standout, so we shall see. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, everybody.